It was not just the sound of fabric tearing, it was the sound of a woman's dignity being shredded under the cold, indifferent glare of a street lamp. For Officer Bryce Harlan, it was a casual act of dominance, a way to put another black woman in her place. For Maya Johnson, a 28-year-old architect driving home from a late-night project, it was the spark that would burn his entire corrupt world to the ground. He thought he was just tearing a dress. He was actually tearing down a precinct. And it all started with a single phone call. Her lawyer was about to make a call that would unleash a reckoning no one, least of all the decorated officers of the 17th Precinct, ever saw coming. The night air of the city of Northgate was cool and damp, a welcome relief from the oppressive humidity of a lingering summer. Maya Johnson had the windows of her sensible 4-year-old sedan down, letting the breeze tangle her braided hair as she drove home. The soft melodies of a jazz station filled the car, a calming soundtrack after a grueling workday, spent finalizing blueprints for a new community art center. She was tired, but it was a good kind of tired, the satisfying ache of progress, of creation. In her rearview mirror, the city skyline glittered, a testament to dreams built from steel and glass. Her own dreams felt closer than ever. Then the world turned into a nightmare of flashing red and blue. The siren was a sudden, violent shriek that tore through the calm jazz. Confused, Maya checked her speedometer. She was going under the speed limit. She glanced around, thinking the police car must be racing to an emergency somewhere else. But it stayed right behind her, its lights painting the interior of her car in frantic, strobing bursts of color. A knot of anxiety tightened in her stomach. She pulled over to the curb, her heart starting to hammer against her ribs. The officer who approached her driver's side window was a large man, his frame seeming to block out all the light from the street lamp above. His name tag read B. Harlan. His face was set in a grim, almost bored expression, but his eyes held a dismissive, predatory glint that made Maya's skin crawl. "License and registration," he grunted, not as a request, but as a command barked into the night. His voice was gravelly, impatient. "Of course, officer," Maya said, her voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. She kept her hands visible on the steering wheel, just as her father had taught her. The talk was a rite of passage for every black child in America, a somber lesson in survival. Keep your hands visible. No sudden movements. Be polite. Call him sir or officer. Do not give them a reason. She reached slowly for the glove compartment. "What are you reaching for?" Harlan's voice sharpened, his hand dropping to the butt of his holstered pistol. "My registration, officer. It is in the glove compartment, just like you asked." He watched her every move, his suspicion a palpable force in the small car. She handed him the documents along with her driver's license from her wallet. He took them without a word and walked back to his patrol car. Maya watched him in the rearview mirror, her breath held tight in her chest. The wait stretched into an eternity. She could see him talking on his radio. What could possibly be the problem? Her record was spotless, not so much as a parking ticket. Finally, he returned. A second officer, younger and with a nervous energy, flanking him. This one's name tag read Brooks. He hung back slightly, his eyes darting between Harlan and Maya. "Ma'am, I'm going to have to ask you to step out of the vehicle," Harlan said, his tone having shifted from bored to confrontational. "Step out, officer? Why?" Did I do something wrong?" "We ran your plates. The vehicle was reported stolen," Harlan stated flatly. Maya's mind reeled. Stolen? That was impossible. "This is my car. I have the title, the loan documents. It is all in my name. There must be a mistake." "The mistake was you driving this car tonight," Harlan sneered. "Now get out of the car. Hands where I can see them." The accusation was so absurd, so blatantly false, that for a moment Maya could only stare at him in disbelief. This had to be a grotesque misunderstanding. But the look in Harlan's eyes told her otherwise. This was not about a mistake. This was about power. She complied, her mind racing. She opened the door and stepped out onto the pavement, the city lights feeling suddenly harsh and accusatory. She was wearing a simple but elegant navy blue silk dress she had worn for a client presentation that afternoon. It was her favorite, a gift from her mother. "Turn around! Put your hands behind your back," Harlan commanded. "Officer, please, just listen to me," Maya pleaded, her voice trembling. "Now!" As she turned, her heel caught on a crack in the pavement, causing her to stumble slightly. That was all the excuse he needed. Harlan lunged forward, shoving her hard against the side of her own car. The cold metal shocked her through the thin silk of her dress. Before she could regain her balance, he grabbed a fistful of the fabric at her back and then, with a deliberate, contemptuous grunt, he yanked. The sound was sharp and violent, a sickening rip that echoed in the quiet street. The silk gave way instantly, tearing from her shoulder blade all the way down to her waist. The cool night air hit her exposed back, and a wave of pure, unadulterated humiliation washed over her. She was half naked on a public street, manhandled for a crime she did not commit, her body and dignity exposed by a man who was supposed to protect her. Tears sprang to her eyes, hot and angry. "You ripped my dress!" she cried out, her voice a mix of shock and rage. "You should have complied," Harlan said, his voice laced with satisfaction as he cinched cold, hard metal cuffs around her wrists. He did not seem to care that the younger officer, Brooks, was now staring, his face pale and his eyes wide with disbelief. They shoved her into the back of the patrol car. The torn dress gaped open, the rough plastic of the seat scratching against her bare skin. As they drove away, she saw her car, her beautiful, safe car, left abandoned by the side of the road, its door still hanging open like a silent wound. At the 17th precinct, the humiliation continued. She was paraded through the station, the torn dress a scarlet letter for all the smirking officers to see. They put her in a cold concrete holding cell, the thin, ripped fabric offering no warmth, no comfort. She sat on the hard bench, shivering not just from the cold, but from a rage so profound it felt like it would burn her from the inside out. They had taken her freedom, her car, and her pride. They had ripped her dress. They had made a grave mistake. They just did not know it yet. The hours Maya spent in the holding cell were the longest of her life. The initial shock and humiliation slowly cooled into a hard, dense core of fury. She replayed the incident over and over, the sneer on Officer Harlan's face, the sickening sound of tearing silk, the casual cruelty of it all. They had tried to make her feel small, to strip her of her humanity. But as the sun began to cast a weak gray light through the grimy high window of the cell, Maya made a promise to herself. They would not break her. They would regret this. She was released with a mumbled apology from a desk sergeant. The car theft report had been a clerical error. A car with a similar plate number, a different make and model on the other side of the state, had been stolen. The charges were dropped. The sergeant handed her a property bag with her purse and keys, never once making eye contact. There was no mention of the ripped dress, no acknowledgement of the terror and degradation she had endured. It was as if it had never happened. Walking out of the 17th Precinct building felt like surfacing for air after being held underwater. She wrapped her arms around herself, trying to hold the ruined dress together. Every passing car, every glance from a stranger felt like an accusation. She called a rideshare and sat in the back, silent and trembling, the driver occasionally glancing at her in the rearview mirror with a look of pity and concern. Back in the safety of her apartment, she finally broke down. She tore off the remains of the dress and stood under a scalding hot shower, scrubbing at her skin as if she could wash away the memory of Harlan's hands, of the cold metal of the car, of the dozens of leering eyes at the precinct. But it was no use. The violation was more than skin deep. The grief had solidified into resolve. This was not just a clerical error, it was an abuse of power, a targeted act of humiliation. They expected her to be grateful for her release, to quietly absorb the trauma and move on. They had picked the wrong woman. She spent the morning online, not looking for a new dress, but for a warrior. She searched for the best civil rights attorneys in Northgate. One name kept appearing, attached to stories of impossible victories, against corrupt systems and abusive police departments. Evelyn Kane. Her firm's website described her as the Lioness of Justice. Her photo showed a woman in her late 40s with sharp, intelligent eyes that seemed to see right through you and a gaze that radiated an unshakable confidence. Maya picked up the phone. Evelyn Kane's office was in a restored brownstone downtown, a world away from the grimy concrete of the 17th Precinct. The walls were lined with law books and framed newspaper clippings detailing her past successes. Evelyn herself was even more formidable in person. She listened to Maya's story without interruption, her expression unreadable. She had a pen in her hand but did not take a single note, her focus entirely on Maya. When Maya finished, her voice thick with emotion, Evelyn leaned forward, her eyes finally betraying a flicker of the fire she was famous for. "They dropped the charges," Evelyn stated, her voice calm and measured. "Yes, they said it was a mistake," Maya confirmed. "And they gave you your car back?" "I had to go to the impound lot and pay a fee to get it," Maya said, a fresh wave of indignation rising in her. Evelyn nodded slowly. "And Officer Harlan?" "Bryce Harlan. You are certain that was his name?" "I will never forget his name or his face as long as I live," Maya said, her voice dropping to a near whisper. Evelyn was silent for a long moment, her gaze distant. Maya's heart sank. She worried this legendary lawyer thought her case was too small, a simple misunderstanding not worth her time. Maybe a ripped dress was not enough. "Ms. Johnson," Evelyn finally said, her voice now infused with a cold, hard anger that startled Maya. "Most people in your position would try to forget this ever happened. They would take the drop charges as a win and go home. Why are you not doing that?" Maya looked down at her hands, then back up to meet the lawyer's intense gaze. "Because if they can do this to me, a professional with a clean record, a stable life, and get away with it, then who else are they doing it to? Who are they doing it to that does not have the resources to fight back? That dress? It was more than just fabric. It was my dignity. It was my safety. It was my right to just exist. And he took a piece of that from me. I want it back. And I want to make sure he can never do this to anyone else again." A slow smile spread across Evelyn Kane's face. It was not a warm smile. It was the smile of a predator that had just caught the scent of its prey. "Officer Bryce Harlan," Evelyn said, tasting the name, "and the 17th Precinct. I have heard whispers about that place for years. Rumors of a punishment squad that operates off the books, a captain who buries complaints, but it has all been whispers. No one has ever been willing to go on the record. They are too afraid." She stood up and walked to her window, looking down at the bustling street below. "A civil suit for damages is easy. We will win that, and you will get a settlement. They will pay you to be quiet. But that is not what you want, is it, Ms. Johnson? You do not just want a check. You want a reckoning." "I want justice," Maya said firmly. Evelyn turned back from the window, her eyes blazing. "Good, because that is the only currency I deal in. This is not about your dress anymore. This is about Officer Harlan and the entire rotten foundation of the 17th Precinct. We are not just going to file a complaint. We are going to launch a war." She extended her hand. "I will take your case, Maya. There will be no fee until we win. And trust me," she added, her grip firm and strong, "we are going to win." In that moment, Maya Johnson knew she had found her lioness. The call for help had been answered, and somewhere in the dark heart of the 17th Precinct, the ground was already beginning to shift beneath their feet. The war began not with a bang, but with a letter. Evelyn Kane drafted a formal notice of intent to sue, addressed to the Northgate Police Department, the city of Northgate, and Officer Bryce Harlan personally. It was a meticulously crafted document outlining the events of the traffic stop in excruciating detail, citing violations of Maya's 4th and 14th Amendment rights and alleging assault, battery, and intentional infliction of emotional distress. It was a warning shot, a declaration that Maya Johnson was not going away. The response from the city's legal department was as swift as it was predictable: a complete and total denial of all allegations. They claimed Officer Harlan had acted professionally and within the bounds of departmental policy. The traffic stop, they argued, was based on a valid report of a stolen vehicle. The tearing of the dress, they asserted, was an unfortunate and incidental consequence of Miss Johnson's noncompliance and physical resistance during a lawful arrest. "They are painting you as the aggressor," Evelyn said, sliding the city's response letter across her polished mahogany desk to Maya. "They are building their narrative. The hysterical, angry black woman who resisted arrest. It is the oldest, dirtiest play in their book." Maya read the words, her stomach churning. "I was not resisting. I stumbled." "I know," Evelyn said calmly. "And you know, but now we have to prove it. And to do that, we need the one thing they will fight tooth and nail to keep from us: evidence." Evelyn's first move was to file a discovery request for Officer Harlan's complete personnel file, all internal complaints filed against him, the dash cam footage from his vehicle, and the body cam footage from both him and Officer Brooks. This is where they hit the first brick in the wall, the infamous blue wall of silence. The department's lawyer stalled. When a judge finally compelled them to respond, the materials they produced were a joke. Harlan's personnel file was suspiciously thin and glowing. It portrayed him as a model officer with numerous commendations and not a single disciplinary action. The dash cam footage they claimed was corrupted due to a technical malfunction, and the body cams Officer Harlan's, they stated, had conveniently been switched off to conserve battery just moments before the traffic stop. Officer Brooks's footage was available, but it was shaky and partially obstructed, offering no clear view of the moment the dress was torn. It showed Maya's back, her hands being cuffed. But the crucial act of violence happened just out of frame. "It is a calculated cover-up," Evelyn fumed, pacing her office. "They are sanitizing the record. A veteran officer like Harlan does not forget to activate his body cam on a felony stop. And dash cams do not just malfunction, not unless someone makes them." The precinct's commander, Captain Harlan Reed, gave a statement to a local news reporter who had gotten wind of the lawsuit. He was a man with a politician's smile and cold, calculating eyes. "Officer Harlan is a decorated member of this department," Reed said smoothly into the microphone. "We have conducted a thorough internal review and found he acted in accordance with his training. It is a shame that our officers are subjected to these kinds of baseless, opportunistic lawsuits while they are out there risking their lives to keep our city safe." The statement was a clear message to the rest of his officers. "We have Harlan's back. The wall holds. Stay silent." The pressure began to mount on Maya. An anonymous online account started posting details from her sealed juvenile record, a minor shoplifting charge when she was 15, long since expunged. It was a scare tactic meant to embarrass and discredit her. Then, unmarked police cars started parking on her street late at night, just sitting there before driving off. It was subtle, deniable harassment, but the message was clear. "We know where you live. Drop this." Maya felt a creeping paranoia. She started looking over her shoulder, jumping at sudden noises. "They are trying to break me, Evelyn," she said during one late-night call, her voice strained with fear. "That is because they are scared, Maya." Evelyn's voice was a firm, reassuring anchor. "They are not doing this because they are strong. They are doing this because they are rotten to the core, and they know it. They know we are digging. We just have not found the weak spot yet. But we will. Every wall has a crack." Evelyn was relentless. She dedicated her firm's full resources to the case. Her investigators started digging into the 17th Precinct's arrest records, looking for patterns. They pulled every case Officer Harlan had ever been the arresting officer on. It was a mountain of paperwork, but Evelyn believed the truth was buried in there somewhere. She began to notice something. A disproportionate number of Harlan's arrests that started as minor traffic stops escalated to resisting arrest or assault on an officer. especially when the defendant was a person of color. And in over a dozen cases, the official complaints filed by the defendants against Harlan had been investigated internally by the 17th Precinct and dismissed by Captain Reed himself, always with the same boilerplate language, unfounded or exonerated. "This is not just one bad apple," Evelyn mused, staring at a whiteboard covered in case numbers and names. "This is an orchard. Reed is not just a captain, he is a gardener, pruning away any evidence of the rot." The wall seemed impenetrable. The department was a fortress, its secrets locked away, its soldiers marching in lockstep. But Evelyn knew that even in the most formidable fortress, there is always someone on the inside who is tired of the lies, someone who is looking for a way out. They just needed to find the crack in the wall, a way to reach the man who had stood by and watched it all happen. The young, pale-faced rookie, Officer Brooks. Evelyn Kane believed that every corrupt system has its own weight, and eventually that weight will cause it to fracture. Her job was to find the existing stress points and apply pressure. The key, she was sure, was Officer Brooks. He was the wild card, a rookie likely still possessing a conscience, not yet calloused by the precinct's toxic culture. He was the only other witness to what Harlan had done, and his body cam footage, conveniently obstructed as it was, proved he was there. Her first attempt to reach him was through official channels. She filed a motion to depose him. The department's lawyers fought it, claiming it was unnecessary and amounted to harassment of an officer just doing his job. While the legal battle raged, Evelyn knew a formal deposition room with a half-dozen city lawyers present was the last place a scared rookie would ever tell the truth. She needed to get to him in a different way. Her lead investigator, a grizzled ex-detective named Marcus Hale, started doing a quiet background check on Brooks. His name was Tanner Brooks, 24 years old, grew up in a working-class suburb, joined the force right out of the academy 6 months ago. His father was a retired firefighter. By all accounts, he was a good kid who wanted to be a hero. He was assigned to Bryce Harlan as his field training officer. He was learning how to be a cop from the worst possible teacher. Evelyn's team found something else, a whisper network, a loose community of lawyers and activists who tracked police misconduct complaints. They cross-referenced the names from the dismissed complaints against Harlan. Many of the accusers had been represented by an overworked, underfunded public defender named Sarah Hayes. Evelyn invited Sarah to her office for coffee. Sarah was young, brilliant, and deeply cynical about the justice system. "The 17th Precinct," Sarah said with a bitter laugh. "We call it Reed's Kingdom. Complaints go in, but they never come out. Harlan is his prized attack dog. I have had at least 5 clients who told me Harlan planted evidence or roughed them up during an arrest. Every time it is my client's word against a decorated cop." Guess who the judge believes? "I have a new client. Her name is Maya Johnson," Evelyn said, watching Sarah's reaction. Sarah's eyes widened slightly. "The architect with the torn dress. I read the initial report. They are trying to bury it." "They are," Evelyn confirmed. "But I have something you never did. A second officer was on the scene, a rookie. His name is Tanner Brooks." Sarah leaned forward, her interest piqued. Getting a cop to flip on another cop is next to impossible. The blue wall is real. "I know," Evelyn said. "But this kid, he is new. He might not be fully indoctrinated yet. I need a way to talk to him unofficially." That is when an idea sparked. It was a long shot, a gamble. But cases like this were won on long shots. Hale's research had turned up a detail about Brooks. He was a devout Catholic. He still served as an usher at his family's parish church, St. Michael's. Every Sunday, the priest there, Father Michael, was known for his social activism and community outreach. Evelyn made a call. She did not mention the case or her name. She simply made a generous, anonymous donation to the church's homeless shelter program. A week later, she attended a Sunday service at St. Michael's. After the service, she introduced herself to Father Michael, thanking him for his work in the community. They spoke for a few minutes about faith and justice. She never mentioned Tanner Brooks, but 2 days later, Evelyn Kane received an anonymous encrypted email. It was short and to the point. I might know someone who is troubled by something he witnessed. He is afraid to talk. He believes he is being watched. How can he be sure he will be protected? Evelyn's heart leapt. This was it. The crack in the wall. She replied with a set of careful, secure instructions. A burner phone, a time, a place, a public library meeting room booked under a false name. When the day came, Evelyn went alone. She sat in the small, sterile room for 20 minutes, beginning to think no one would show. Then the door opened, and Tanner Brooks slipped inside. He looked even younger than his pictures, his face etched with anxiety. He was wearing a hoodie pulled low over his face, and he could not stop wringing his hands. "You are the lawyer for Ms. Johnson?" he asked, his voice barely a whisper. "I am?" Evelyn said softly, not wanting to spook him. "Thank you for coming, Officer Brooks. I know this is a huge risk." "You do not know the half of it," he stammered. "Harlan, he has been watching me ever since that night, asking me what I remember, reminding me that rookies who cannot be trusted do not last long. Reed called me into his office for a pep talk. He told me how important loyalty is. It was not a pep talk, it was a threat." "What happened that night, Tanner?" Evelyn asked gently. "Tell me what you saw." The young officer took a deep breath, the story pouring out of him as if a dam had broken. He explained that the stolen car alert had been a misread from the dispatcher, a single digit off, and Harlan knew it almost immediately. But Maya had questioned him, and Harlan hated being questioned by people like her. He decided to teach her a lesson, Brooks said, his eyes shining with shame. The whole thing was a pretext, and the dress? He did it on purpose. I saw the look on his face. He enjoyed it. Afterwards, back at the car, he was laughing. He told me that is how you get respect. But that was not respect. It was evil. Brooks then told her something that made the blood run cold in Evelyn's veins. It is not just him. It is a whole group of them at the 17th. They call themselves the Keepers. Harlan, a few other senior guys. They run the night shift. They have a ledger and off-the-books record of their trophies. Illegal cash they seize in raids, jewelry, stuff that never makes it into the evidence locker. Reed knows all about it. He gets a cut. They use that money to pay off informants, to fix problems, to keep everyone in line. Evelyn sat in stunned silence. This was so much bigger than a ripped dress. It was not a crack she had found, it was a chasm leading straight to the rotten heart of the precinct. A web of systemic organized crime protected by the captain himself. "Why are you telling me this?" Evelyn finally asked, her voice low. "Because I became a cop to help people," Brooks said, his voice cracking with emotion. "Like my dad, I did not sign up for this. I cannot be a part of it. But if I go through official channels, I am dead. Reed will crush me and Harlan will find a way to put me in the hospital or worse. They will say I am a disgruntled rookie making things up. You are my only shot. You are the only one I think they might actually be afraid of." Evelyn leaned forward, her expression one of deadly seriousness. "Tanner, what you are doing takes immense courage. I will protect you, but I need more than your word. I need proof. Can you get me that ledger?" Tanner Brooks looked terrified, but for the first time a flicker of resolve appeared in his eyes. He nodded. "I think so. I know where they keep it." The crack in the wall had just become a doorway, and Evelyn Kane was about to walk right through it, ready to bring the entire corrupt structure crashing down. Getting the ledger was like planning a heist. Tanner Brooks was their man on the inside, but he was a terrified rookie, not a seasoned spy. Over a series of clandestine meetings in noisy coffee shops and secluded park benches, using burner phones and coded language, her investigator Marcus Hale coached him. The ledger, as Tanner described it, was not a formal book. It was a simple spiral-bound notebook hidden in a locked petty cash box inside Captain Reed's personal office filing cabinet, a place no one would dare look. It was brazen, a symbol of their untouchable arrogance. The key was kept on Reed's personal keyring, but Tanner had noticed something. On the last Friday of every month, Reed went for a long lunch at an old-school Italian restaurant with a deputy city councilman, a lunch that was undoubtedly part of the web of corruption. During that time, he would leave his keys in his desk drawer. The plan was set for the following Friday. The risk was immense. If Tanner was caught, his career would be over, and his personal safety would be in serious jeopardy. The night before the planned operation, Harlan cornered him in the precinct locker room. "Heard you have been talking to lawyers," Harlan said, his voice a low growl, as he slammed his locker shut, making Tanner jump. "Just a friendly reminder, kid. Rats get squashed. You understand me?" Harlan's eyes were cold and flat, devoid of any humanity. The threat hung in the air, thick and suffocating. The intimidation tactic almost worked. A panicked Tanner called Evelyn, ready to back out. They know I'm talking," he whispered frantically into the burner phone. "No, Tanner, they do not." Evelyn's voice was a steady, calming force. "This is what bullies do. They sniff out fear and uncertainty. Harlan does not know anything for sure. He's just trying to spook you. He's trying to reassert his control. Do not let him. Think about Maya Johnson. Think about all the others. This is bigger than his fear tactics." Her words strengthened his resolve. The next day, his heart pounding in his chest, Tanner went through with the plan. While Reed was out, Tanner feigned a computer issue that required him to be in the captain's office. He managed to get the keys, open the filing cabinet, and find the box. His hands trembled as he used his phone to photograph every single page of the ledger. The entries were a damning chronicle of years of theft and abuse. Dates, names of victims, items taken, and a crude system of codes indicating how the loot was split. Harlan's initials, BH, appeared more than any other. He returned the ledger and the keys just minutes before Reed returned, smelling of wine and garlic. No one was the wiser. That evening, he transferred the encrypted image files to Evelyn. When Evelyn saw the photos of the ledger pages, she knew she had them. It was the Rosetta Stone of the 17th Precinct's corruption. It listed cash from drug busts that was never reported, jewelry from burglaries that was lost from the evidence room, and even protection money from local businesses. It corroborated the stories from Sarah Hayes' clients and dozens of others. It directly implicated not just Harlan, but a half-dozen other senior officers, and crucially, Captain Reed himself, whose initials appeared next to the largest shares. While Evelyn was building her arsenal, the harassment against Maya intensified. One evening, as she was walking to her car from her office, Harlan's personal vehicle, a dark, menacing pickup truck, screeched to a halt beside her. He leaned across the passenger seat, his face illuminated by the dashboard lights. "You think your fancy lawyer can save you?" he sneered, his voice dripping with venom. "You are making a big mistake. You should drop this for your own good." He drove off, leaving Maya shaking with fear and rage. She immediately called Evelyn. "That is it," Evelyn said, her voice like ice. "He just crossed a line from civil harassment to criminal witness intimidation. We are done playing defense." The ledger was the spine of their case, but Evelyn wanted to put a human face to the corruption. Armed with the names from the ledger, Hale and his team began tracking down other victims. Many were too scared to talk, but some, emboldened by the promise of anonymity and the prospect of real justice, agreed to provide affidavits. There was the story of an elderly shopkeeper whose store was robbed, after which Harlan and his crew recovered only a fraction of the stolen cash. The ledger showed they had pocketed thousands. There was a young man who had been arrested on a bogus drug charge after Harlan planted a baggie on him, all to steal a valuable family heirloom, a vintage watch that the ledger listed as a trophy for Harlan. The web of corruption was more extensive than Evelyn had ever imagined. The 17th Precinct was not just a police station. It was a criminal enterprise with badges and guns, preying on the very community it was sworn to protect. Officer Harlan was not a bad apple. He was a product of a rotten tree, nurtured and protected by his captain, Harlan Reed. Maya Johnson's ripped dress was not an isolated incident of an officer losing his temper. It was a symptom of a deep systemic sickness. It was the casual, arrogant cruelty of men who believed they were above the law, that they were accountable to no one. They believed their blue wall was impenetrable. Evelyn now held the sledgehammer that was about to prove them wrong. A civil lawsuit was no longer the right tool for this job. You do not sue a crime syndicate. You dismantle it. It was time to stop knocking on the door. It was time to kick it down. She picked up her phone to make the most important call of her career. The call Evelyn Kane made was not to a judge, a prosecutor, or a city official. She knew that route would get bogged down in politics, internal investigations, and professional courtesy. The system was designed to protect itself. To bring down Reed's kingdom, she needed to go outside the system. She needed to create a firestorm so massive that the powers that be would have no choice but to act, not to cover it up. She called Marcus Hale. Marcus Hale was a legend, a Pulitzer Prize-winning investigative journalist for the Northgate Chronicle. He was old school, a man who lived by the motto, "Comfort the afflicted and afflict the comfortable." He had a reputation for being relentless, incorruptible, and fiercely protective of his sources. He and Evelyn had a long history of professional respect. She had occasionally been his anonymous source, and he had covered some of her biggest cases. "Evelyn," his gruff voice answered, "to what do I owe the pleasure? Found another dragon for me to slay?" "A whole den of them, Marcus," Evelyn replied, her voice low and serious. "And I have the map that leads right to their lair. This is the biggest thing I've ever seen. It will tear this city's police department apart." They met that night in the newspaper's empty conference room. The air was thick with the smell of old paper and stale coffee. Evelyn laid out the entire story, starting with Maya's ripped dress and ending with the bombshell, the digital copies of the ledger. She handed him the stack of affidavits from other victims and the file on Officer Brooks, whose identity she would only reveal once Marcus guaranteed he could protect him. Marcus Hale listened intently, his eyes scanning the documents. He was a man who had seen the worst of humanity. Yet as he looked at the ledger pages, even he let out a low whistle. "My God, Evelyn, this is organized crime," he said, looking up from the pages, his journalist's cynicism momentarily replaced by genuine shock. "And Reed is the mob boss. He has been running this crew for years," Evelyn said. "They are untouchable. They harass, they steal, they assault, and he buries the complaints. Maya Johnson was just the one who refused to stay buried, and this rookie, he is willing to testify." "He is terrified," Evelyn admitted, "but he is willing. He is the key." "But Marcus, if his name gets out before Reed and Harlan are in cuffs, they will destroy him, or worse." Marcus nodded, his expression grim. "He will be my confidential source with intimate knowledge of the precinct's operations. I will protect him with my life. This story, it needs to be handled perfectly. We cannot just publish it. We need to coordinate the drop, make it a surgical strike." For the next week, they worked in secret. Marcus and his investigative team at the Chronicle worked around the clock, vetting every detail, corroborating every name and date in the ledger with official records, and preparing a massive multi-part exposé. Meanwhile, Evelyn used back channels to deliver a sealed copy of the evidence package to a trusted contact she had high within the U.S. Department of Justice's Civil Rights Division. She did not file it through the local field office, which she suspected had been compromised by Reed's political connections. She sent it straight to Washington, D.C. The plan was for a two-pronged attack. The newspaper story would break on a Sunday morning, ensuring maximum readership and impact. Simultaneously, the federal investigators, armed with the same evidence, would be ready to move. On the designated Sunday, the front page of the Northgate Chronicle was a bombshell. The headline in giant bold letters read, "The Kingdom of the 17th, a den of thieves in blue." The story was devastating. It detailed the systemic corruption, featuring excerpts from the ledger. It told Maya Johnson's story in vivid, heartbreaking detail, a photo of her torn navy dress accompanying the article. It included the anonymized but powerful testimonies of other victims. It painted a portrait of Bryce Harlan as a violent predator and Captain Harlan Reed as the corrupt architect who enabled him. The article ended with a quote from a protected source. "It was not a police precinct, it was a gang with badges." The city erupted. By morning, every local news station was leading with the story. The mayor was besieged with calls. The police chief was blindsided. But before the city government could even begin to formulate a PR spin response, the second wave of the attack hit. A fleet of black SUVs with federal plates swarmed the 17th precinct. FBI agents armed with federal warrants poured into the building, ordering everyone to put their hands up. They seized computers, files, and evidence lockers. The stunned officers who had considered themselves untouchable just hours before could only watch in disbelief. Officer Bryce Harlan was arrested at his home while reading the morning paper that featured his name. He reportedly threw a coffee cup at the federal agents before being wrestled to the ground in his pajamas. Captain Harlan Reed was pulled out of a crisis meeting at police headquarters. As he was led away in handcuffs, his face a mask of fury and disbelief, he saw Marcus Hale and a photographer standing on the steps. The resulting photo, the disgraced captain, his hands cuffed behind his back, his politician's smile finally gone, would be the defining image of the scandal. The 17th precinct was declared an active crime scene and sealed off. The call Evelyn Kane had made to a journalist a week earlier had not just brought a lawsuit, it had brought down the entire precinct in a single morning. The blue wall of silence had not just been cracked, it had been demolished by a precision-guided missile of truth. The fall of the 17th precinct sent shockwaves through Northgate and beyond. It became a national story, a case study in systemic corruption and the courage it took to expose it. The aftermath was a slow, painful, but ultimately cleansing process of reckoning. The federal investigation, built on the foundation of Evelyn's evidence and Tanner Brooks's testimony, was swift and brutal. Tanner, now publicly known as the whistleblower, was placed in federal protection. He gave days of damning testimony detailing everything he had seen. Captain Harlan Reed, stripped of his power and his smug demeanor, tried to cut a deal, but the evidence against him was too overwhelming. The ledger, his own arrogant record of their crimes, was his undoing. He was convicted on multiple counts of racketeering, obstruction of justice, and conspiracy. The judge, calling his actions a cancerous betrayal of the public trust, sentenced him to 25 years in a federal penitentiary. He lost his pension, his reputation, and his freedom. In court, he looked like a shrunken, pathetic old man, the king of the 17th precinct, now just another inmate number. Officer Bryce Harlan's trial was even more dramatic. Evelyn made sure Maya was there every day, sitting in the front row, a silent, powerful presence. More than a dozen other victims Harlan had brutalized over the years testified against him. The young man whose vintage watch he had stolen, the elderly shopkeeper he had robbed. The trial laid bare his pattern of racist violence and sadistic cruelty. He was arrogant and defiant on the stand, a performance that did him no favors with the jury. He was found guilty of assault, witness intimidation, and his role in the racketeering conspiracy. He received a sentence of 30 years. The hard karma the universe owed him was delivered on his first day in the maximum security prison. As he walked through the yard, he was recognized by another inmate, a man he had framed years earlier who had always sworn his innocence. The prison system, in its own brutal way, delivered a form of justice that a courtroom never could. Harlan's reign of terror was definitively over. 6 other officers from the Keepers were also convicted and sent to prison. The 17th precinct was permanently disbanded. The building itself was eventually torn down, and the city council approved plans for a new community center to be built on the site. A project in a twist of poetic justice. Designed by Maya Johnson's architectural firm. Maya won a historic civil settlement from the city. But it was never about the money. She used a significant portion of it to establish the Johnson Foundation for Police Accountability, a nonprofit dedicated to supporting victims of police misconduct and advocating for systemic reform. She became a powerful voice for change. Her story a symbol of resilience and the fight for justice. She had turned her deepest humiliation into her greatest strength. Evelyn Kane became one of the most respected civil rights attorneys in the country. She used the notoriety from the case to push for national police reform legislation. She continued her work as the Lioness of Justice, taking on cases others deemed impossible. As for Tanner Brooks, he was hailed as a hero. After the trials, he honorably resigned from the police force, deciding the culture was not something he could fix from the inside. He went back to school and became a social worker, dedicating his life to helping at-risk youth, the very kids who were so often the targets of men like Harlan. One sunny afternoon, about a year after the trials had concluded, Maya stood across the street from the now empty lot where the 17th Precinct once stood. The sounds of construction for the new community center filled the air. She was no longer the terrified woman in a ripped silk dress. She was a creator, a fighter, a philanthropist. She had faced down the monster and won. The scar from that night would always be a part of her, but it was no longer a mark of shame. It was a medal of honor, a reminder that sometimes the most destructive acts can lead to the most profound acts of creation, and that the sound of tearing fabric can sometimes be the prelude to the sound of a rotten building coming crashing down. Maya Johnson's story is a profound testament to how a single act of defiance can ignite a revolution. It began with the tearing of a dress, but ended with the demolition of a corrupt institution. Her journey from a victim of brutal humiliation to an architect of justice shows that the deepest wounds can be transformed into the greatest strengths. The downfall of the 17th Precinct was not merely about jailing one monstrous officer, it was about the courageous acts of a whistleblower and a relentless lawyer who dared to challenge the entire rotten system and its impenetrable blue wall of silence. This narrative, while fictional, reflects a reality many face. It is a stark reminder that true justice is not passively received. It must be actively, fiercely, and bravely demanded. We all have a role to play in holding power accountable. If this story of resilience and ultimate reckoning resonated with you, please help us amplify these important messages. Hit the like button, share this video with others who need to hear it, and be sure to subscribe for more stories that matter. What part of Maya's fight for justice inspired you the most? We want to hear from you, so please leave your thoughts in the comments below. Thank you for watching.